Imagine creating a being that exists only in your mind, one that seems to act independently, communicates with you, and even influences your thoughts. Some call it an imaginary friend. Others would call it a tulpa.
Now imagine a being that emerges not from one mind, but from the shared belief of a group, an egregore. Tonight we explore both phenomena, their history, documented examples, and what they tell us about the power of the mind.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to They're Still Here. I'm David,
And I'm Jesse.
and today's episode we will dive deep into the idea of the tulpa and the egregore, exploring their origins, their cultural context, and the experiences reported by those who have created or interacted with them.
We'll examine historical accounts, the famous Philip experiment, and other examples from both individual and group practices. By the end, you'll understand the distinction and the impact these entities can have on perception and experience.
And I don't know about you, Jesse, but I am really excited about this episode.
Me too, because I've always loved different things from people stating like these objects were real, and also a bunch of the theories and everything behind it, from scientific to religious to, I mean, there's so many different things.
So, one of my favorite ideas in the paranormal field is the idea of the tulpa and the egregore. I think they're just nifty as hell, right? Whether you believe
Uh,
in it or not, it doesn't matter, but they're just great.
yeah, I agree
And
100% because it's impressive what the mind can create
right,
and make as a physical, well, as close to physical being.
right. And you think of this, when you think of like a tulpa or an egregore, kind of a
Mhm.
good example of an egregore, for instance, would be like the idea of Slender Man, right?
Yeah, I was just about to say that, honestly.
Slender Man, but also the Rake is another one that
Yes.
came up in creepypasta and everything on Reddit and I think 4chan or something like that.
It kind of spread like wildfire at one
It
point in
did.
time.
And well, now there are videos coming out of Canada that I've seen online. Now, I'm not going to give them too much credence because I haven't had a real chance to look at them, but
Mhm.
where people are claiming to start seeing the Rake out in
Yeah.
the world. And so it's a really cool idea, and I am so excited to share it with our listeners. It's going to be awesome.
Also, I mean, if anybody out there has any other experiences or any other things that they found out from tulpas or egregores, please let us know. We would love to hear about them.
Oh yeah, definitely. You can find us. Just go on our Facebook page, tag us in it. You can join our Discord and talk to us on there about it as well. Also, comments are on these podcasts. Like you guys can leave comments here, and we'll respond to them as often as we can.
100%. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Oh yeah. And so, another thing that I do want to address is a little bit of the elephant in the room. So I brought up that this podcast was supposed to release last week. Thank you guys so much for your patience through this. So I had a old microphone
My bad.
and No, it's not your fault. I'm the one that
It's
kept
my
it.
original. What can I say?
Well, I'm one of those people. I don't typically buy things until it breaks, and well, it broke,
Mhm.
and so
It
but
had
we're
a good run. It
it's
lasted 5 years. It had a good run.
yeah, and so but now we're back up and running. We can finally get back on pace. Now this episode is going to release on Friday, right? Like it was supposed to last
Yes.
week. However, I am also going to make sure that we release on schedule for next week as well with our next episode. So there will
Yes.
be 2 weeks of straight releases, and then we will go to our 2 week release schedule. I
Yes.
wanted to make that clear. I'll mention something again at the bottom of the episode, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
But without further ado, let's jump in and let's talk about the Tulpa. The Tulpa comes from Tibetan Buddhism, describing a mental construct intentionally created through meditation. Practitioners believe that with a strong focus, a tulpa can manifest its own personality, sometimes appearing in visions or dreams.
Alexander Dave Neal, the French explorer, documented Tibetan monks creating thought forms for protection, guidance, or companionship. One monk described a tulpa appearing as a friend to meditate with at night, visible in the mind's eye, responsive to interaction, yet ultimately entirely mental.
Western parapsychologists and occultists became fascinated with these in the earliest 20th century. They translated the concept into psychological and metaphysical experiments, noting that tulpas could seem independent, showing autonomous behavior in dreams or in writing. Now, I know I made the comment at the beginning of the episode about, might be an imaginary friend, but it's really not. It's a little bit stronger than that.
Well, it has to start out somewhere. So, like I said, in the mind's eye. So, in some people's cases for a tulpa,
Mm-hmm.
they only perceive it.
Right.
They can see the form, they can see what it's supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and things could be moving around it, as if they are interacting with those objects. It just depends on how strong, like they're, because it tulpas usually when they're created, other than being a thought form from the mind, it's also from your energies that you put out as well to push this like this entity in uh, object, whatever you want to call it, into
Right.
being.
Right.
So it just depends on that strength. And yeah, you're right. They do become autonomous. They do become something that others can see as well. It's just depending on like practice and depending on how strong that becomes, that thought form becomes.
Right. And, another thing, one thing that it makes me think of that I think will help our listeners kind of understand more along the lines of what a tulpa is. I understand the movie. So we're going to see if you remember this movie, Jesse. It is from
Oh,
1991.
okay.
Okay. Now, it's based around an imaginary friend. However, some of the things that this guy can do, this imaginary friend, lines up more with the tulpa. And I am talking about the movie Drop Dead Fred.
Yes, I do know that movie.
I loved that movie as a kid. And it's a great movie, but and it kind of embodies this whole idea to me, right? Like every time I think
Yeah.
of the idea of the tulpa, for some reason my brain immediately goes Drop Dead Fred. And so, it's a really interesting concept and something that has been taken into you know, not just in the Buddhism side of it or the
Mhm.
parapsychological side, it's also been taken into media, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's movies out there. I'm trying to think of other ideas that movies where they have created thought forms to put out there that have done things. I know there's a bunch of them.
Honestly, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I can't either, but like I know that I've seen stuff, right? And I know
Yes.
that makes me sound absolutely bonkers, but here we are.
I was gonna say you're not. We're
Welcome to the show.
if you are, then I am. Then we're both going to
Hey,
we'll go to the state hospital together. It's fine.
exactly. Bring your EVP recorder. But
Depends on which one we go to.
right. I don't know if I want to talk to some of them. But but yeah, like, and the idea of the tulpa, right? It's, it can be a companion, but it can also do tasks, right? It can work on things for you. I've read some research that has shown some Tibetan monks have said that they can have it do things, or some, I guess at this point you would call them conjurers, right? But they can create a tulpa that's powerful enough to affect the world around them, right?
Yes.
And now that's a slippery slope from everything that I have read, right? Where they can
Yes.
sometimes become more powerful than the quote unquote conjurer, right? So it's
Right.
definitely something, don't undertake this lightly if you do this. Make sure that you go through the training, do everything that you need to do, and, be as safe as you can with it. But apparently there's a whole school of thought that says that, hey, anybody can do this.
Yes.
And so it's kind of an interesting little thing. And it's an interesting tidbit about it that, it's still in practice today. And it's not just the Tibetan monks that are doing this, right? Like it's people in New York City, it's people in, you know, England or Spain or wherever, right? I'm seeing posts all over Reddit. And I mean, granted, take those with a grain of salt, but they're
Mhm.
saying that they have created their own tulpa.
That is
And
just amazing.
it is. And it really points to the power of the mind and the energy that's inside of us, right?
Yes. I mean, there's
And
so many capabilities that what is it that stated that we only use what, 20% of our brain power? Or or is it
that
higher than
was
that?
it was it was 10% of our brain power,
Is
and
it
that
10?
was a
I thought it was
study.
20.
It was 10, and that was from a study done in like the early 1900s or something like that.
I wondered about that.
We don't actually only use 10% of our brain. That's a myth. We
I was
use
about to say, I always
100% of
wondered
our
about
brain's
that.
capability. However, some people don't use their brain at all, so but
That's also true, I'll give you
you
that one.
but
That is amazing.
but
But
yeah, so
yeah,
that's
because
kind of
you
a
hear about
thing.
those studies and stuff, and it makes you wonder if say if it was possible that some people have the innate abilities just locked away,
Mhm.
and from all that meditation and everything else to be able to bring forth abilities, and say one of those abilities is creating said tulpa.
I forget who it was, but there was a researcher that I was doing research into recently, a paranormal researcher, that said everyone has the capability,
Mhm.
right? Everyone innately has the ability to interact with the other side,
Yes.
but some people don't use it. Some people shut it off. Some people don't even realize they have it, right? And
Mhm.
so it's one of those things where it's like, you never know what you're actually capable of until
Right.
you attempt to develop that ability. And it's kind of the same thing here. You don't know what you can do until you do,
Yes.
right? Think of somebody, that just started lifting weights.
Mhm.
They may not realize, they may be 150 pounds. They may not realize that they can already lift 175 pounds, right?
Yes.
So it's like you don't know what you can do until you do it. And sometimes you have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone to be able to do those things. And so kind of like you brought up, with the 10% of your brain thing, right? The idea with that, and then looking into the movie, speaking of movies again, because apparently I'm in a movie mood. You look at the movie Lucy
Yes.
with Scarlett Johansson. That's literally what that movie is about. Well, humans only use 10% of their brain, but then she starts unlocking it percent by percent, every
Because
10%
of the
she gets
drugs that
stronger.
got in her system.
Exactly. But drugs are bad, okay? And
Okay.
but all the movie references today.
Oh, yeah.
And but so that's kind of what people think of when they say, well, we can use more of our brain if we do this. It's like, well, you're already using all of your brain. You're
Mhm.
just you may not be using it correctly. You may not be
Yeah.
tapping into your innate power. You may not be tapping into the energy that's there, whether
Mhm.
that's your chakras, whether that's just electrical impulses, whether that's however you view it.
Or I mean, list goes on.
Exactly. And yeah, I had a brain fart, couldn't even think of the word aura. But,
I got you.
but when you're really looking at these things, everything that I've read says nothing about the limitations of people to do this.
Agreed.
It just says the limitations of basically people's training and
Yes.
people's willingness.
Yes.
But here again, I do need to say one big thing. The tulpa is more than just an imaginary friend.
Mhm.
The tulpa, from all of my reading, now I'm not an expert in any way, right?
Mhm.
However, in all of my reading, it does show that if you create a tulpa and you lose control of it, it can be a very dangerous situation, not just for you, but for others as well. So
Mhm.
ensure that if you do undertake this task, you do it in a safe way. You do it with somebody that knows.
Yes.
That's my recommendation.
Because that takes a lot of like a lot of concentration, and I mean, you got to think about it. Those Tibetan monks have been doing this for years. I mean, they were
Hmm.
born basically into into these
Yeah.
monasteries, and just born and raised to learn and to be able to get to this level.
Hmm.
And
A
I
lot
mean,
of
that's one
them,
thing that always blows my mind
yeah,
is
a
how
lot of
much
them
it
really,
took for them just to get to that point in their lives where they could actually create. But they always had control. They never lost control
well,
whenever they had those.
there's a few
Well,
stories of
depending on
them.
where.
There's a few stories of even Tibetan monks losing control of them because they're not,
Well, just from the standardized studies that I looked
yeah,
at, but that's about it.
they're not infallible, right? They're still
No, no,
people,
nobody
right?
is. Yeah.
And they may be really good at it, but even Babe Ruth struck out once or twice, right? It just
I
is
like
what
that
it is.
analogy.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't matter. You know,
Mhm.
freaking Michael Phelps lost the race once. It
Yeah.
it's however you want to look at it. Everybody has an off day. But the problem comes in when you're dealing with something like this, even if you spent decades doing this, you can still lose it.
Yes.
And whether you may be Tiger Woods all day long with this, right? And then
Mhm.
that 9 iron heads for your Escalade, and then all of a sudden you're not very good at golf anymore, and you got to get a new phone. I don't know.
Okay, my brain just broke.
It was a for those that don't know, is Tiger Woods got caught cheating, and his wife at the time threw a 9 iron through the back glass of his Escalade. But anyway, my point is everybody has a bad day.
What? Yes, 100%.
So, but our next step here is we're going to go ahead and jump into a couple of modern Tulpas case studies.
In the 1970s, a group of Canadian parapsychologists and participants conducted the Philip experiment to test if a thought form could manifest.
They created a fictional character, Philip, gave him a backstory, including likes and dislikes and personality. They also included both verified history and fictional history into his backstory, and they attempted to bring him to life through focused belief and seances.
Over the weeks of sessions, the participants reported knocks, table movement, and strange occurrences, attributing them to Philip. Though nothing physically dangerous occurred, the experiences were unexpected, illustrating the autonomy of the tulpa within the group's perception.
Psychologists, however, explain most of this evidence through the ideomotor reflex, which is a psychological principle where a thought or idea triggers an unconscious, involuntary movement, expectation, and group focus. Now, everything about the ideomotor reflex is it's basically the idea that you have an idea, right? So you look at like the human pendulum
Yes.
tests, right? So that's another thing with the ideomotor reflexes and micro movements, stuff like that, where
Hmm.
you're expecting to go one way or another, right? Because the
Yes.
way that so for those that don't know the way that the human pendulum works, is you have a volunteer that goes out and basically opens themselves up to some spirit contact. And they use a direction that they lean for yes and a direction they lean for no. The
Yeah.
volunteer does. Now, the volunteer, ideally, is not the one that makes those choices. It's supposed to be the spirit. But there are a lot of critics and skeptics of that test and that experiment that bring up the ideomotor reflex. And it kind of falls into the same category, kind of like with a Ouija board, right? You ask the Ouija board
Hmm.
a question, you kind of already know the answer that you're looking for,
Of
right?
course. Yes.
Is there anything here? You're expecting to get a yes, or
Hmm.
you're expecting to get a no. You're expecting to get some kind of answer. So the idea behind the ideomotor reflex is that your brain just tells your hands, hey, go ahead and push that planchette over to this answer. Move it to the right,
Yes.
move it to the left, move it just a little. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's just a roller coaster. It's a rolling vehicle, right? It's hard to stop.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the biggest problem with a lot of these things, especially when you get into a group setting, is now it's not just one person swaying the answers. It's everybody. And that's kind of
Right.
what psychologists explain. And that's
Okay.
how they
Well,
try
that
to
does make
justify
sense.
it. Yeah. And it really does. It's kind of like pareidolia, or it's kind of like, the idea of sleep deprivation causing, you know, some paranormal experiences, right? Because your brain's working overtime now because
Yeah.
it's tired. So,
Mostly hallucinations at one point, but yeah.
exactly. Whether they be auditory, whether they be visual, whether it be olfactory,
Hmm.
things like that. And so, but still, the participants perceived Philip as independent, right? Like demonstrating how they were trying to demonstrate how belief can create persistent mental entities, right? And one of the
Right.
biggest things that they said was, we didn't expect anything to happen, and yet it did.
Which is very true. I mean, that is fascinating about how human perception and everything that can happen because your body naturally, like, say you want something to happen and you say
Mhm.
you're the one that's going to be the one answering said questions by the leaning, even if you
Exactly.
don't think you're moving, your subconscious will still do it. But yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Exactly. It's kind of like the whole idea of the Estes method when you're
Yes.
doing spirit box work, right?
Oh,
You
very
want to
much
make
so.
sure that they have the noise canceling headphones and they're blindfolded and they can't see you or hear you because that
Hmm.
can influence their answers. Because the
Very
brain
true.
is now trying, whether you mean to or not, your brain is trying to answer the question that's been asked,
Yeah.
right? And if you
I
take
mean,
that out of the equation,
yeah, that is very, very true. I mean, that's the crazy thing because even with modern Tulpa communities, online have expanded these practices with individuals creating digital or mental companions they can interact with daily, sometimes for companionship, emotional support, or spiritual practice.
right. And it's kind of like, so it kind of does fall into the realm of imaginary friends,
Hmm.
right? Because especially in this situation, when you're looking at companions they can interact with, they're
Yeah,
companions, right?
just
But
needing
yet,
something or someone, being there for their in their life, feeling lonely or anything around that. Sometimes that could bring
exactly,
that thought form of life.
yeah.
'Cause they miss somebody or miss something for so long, then yeah.
hmm And we go back to the idea of drop dead Fred.
Mhm.
You know, they come back when you need them, right?
Yes.
And so a tulpa is a really interesting idea. Now, there are super there are super specific things that you want to make sure that you maintain from everything that I've read, right? You want to maintain that you have the mental fortitude to keep a hold of that tulpa. Otherwise,
Yes.
it could run rampant. And there are stories that I have heard of tulpas injuring their conjurers,
Hmm.
if not killing them, right? Like
Yeah.
it's happened because they become this independent form from you. And that's what you want to avoid, right?
Hmm.
And it's like, especially when you're dealing with a tulpa, it's really important to keep that under control as much as you can.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it can go really badly for you and the people around you.
That's the funny thing. Speaking of tulpas, it kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with because I've heard stories about items being tied to a tulpa
Hmm.
compared to being possessed by a demon, like
So,
being a cursed object, so to speak. But where someone, like, say it's an item of a person that you miss, something
mhm,
that you have of theirs, and that's what you concentrate on. That's what you want. That's like
mhm.
everything for your companion and everything else like that. And
Oh,
that's what came back and it's tied to said item.
so think of it like a focus. You
Yeah.
use
It's
it to
something
help you
used for
focus. So it's
focus
not
and that became
necessarily, yeah.
right. But anytime something was interact with that, that's when it would appear.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean,
So
it really just depends because that kind of gives way to like the idea of the jinn, right? And the genie,
right.
right? Which
Mhm.
that's the genie is the jinn, right? It just
Yes,
is
it
what
is
it
a
is.
gen. Mhm.
Um, it's just really Disneyed up. And
It's not Robin
gins,
Williams.
yeah, gins are not pleasant.
No, you
There are
do not want to
some,
have those wishes granted, no
well,
matter
there
how
are
you spin
some
it.
of them in folklore, and I know this episode's not about Jim, but there are some in the folklore that
Mhm.
have been good. They've been
Yeah.
beneficial, right? And so it's entirely possible,
Mhm.
but yet it's one of those where like don't play
You
with
never quite
fire.
know. Yeah, you don't wanna get
Yeah,
burned.
yeah, you don't want to play with fire,
No.
but and there's a lot of ethical questions that I personally have with tulpas, right? Like, because
Mm,
a lot of times, like in the lore, the folklore that I've read, it talks about people using them against people,
yes.
and I don't like that,
I don't
obviously,
either.
but it's also one of those things where it's like it's not it happened and it happens, but it's not necessarily the way that people are like, hey, yeah, go do this.
Mhm.
It'll torture your enemies, right? Like that's not exactly what they're looking for.
No.
And so I guess it's not as big of an ethical question, but like there are ethical things to take into consideration when you do this. Make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons,
Yes.
right? If you
Safety
do
is
this,
key. It
and like
doesn't
I
matter
said
if it's
before,
safety for you, it's also safety for everyone.
and like I said before, is if you do want to try to get into this idea, be sure that you find somebody reputable that has
Mhm.
experience and knowledge in
Yes.
this. Not just, a Reddit post on the internet, not just, instructables guide,
Mhm.
you know,
No
but
DIY.
right. Don't DIY a Tulpa.
No.
Tulpa DIY. It's going to be the next for dummies book. But,
It's fantastic.
definitely be safe with it, right? And
Correct.
find someone that knows. That's the important thing. And now let's move into the other topic for today. We're going to talk about egregores. So, egregores are like the tulpa. However, they emerge in Western occult traditions as collective thought forms. So, they're often created unintentionally through shared belief or intentionally through ritual. They are maintained and strengthened by repeated group attention.
But unlike the tulpas, egregores are not tied to a single person's focus. They appear in folklore, secret societies, religious rituals, and even urban legends. Their influence can be seen in the behavior of groups, mood, and cultural perception.
And an egregore can persist for decades or centuries, growing stronger as the group maintains attention and ritualized interaction. It doesn't have a physical form, but may influence events and participants' perceptions, shaping traditions and beliefs. So, if you think about it, and go with me here, I don't mean this in a judgmental way.
Okay.
Think of it like God, like the
Okay.
Christian God, the idea of that, or Zeus, or whoever it is that is worshiped, right?
Yes.
They don't necessarily have a physical form, but yet they influence events, they influence the outcomes of things just by them existing, right?
Correct.
And I'm not talking about this in a religious aspect for those that are wondering.
Well, I mean, if you look at it this way, Rosicrucians, Freemasons, or occult circles who attribute symbolic protective entities, they did
Mhm.
that in their group practices.
Right,
So, I mean,
right.
that's just a
And
prime example.
yeah, and you run into these situations where you have an idea,
Hmm.
you know, ideas are bulletproof, Mr. Creary, right?
Yeah,
V for Vendetta reference. And if you haven't seen that movie, go watch it. It's my favorite.
it's an excellent movie.
Mhm. And, but these things can just persist. They
Yes.
exist just through belief.
Hmm.
And I have a really fun take for everybody to hear about at the end of this episode.
Uh
And we're going to have a conversation about it.
oh.
And I want to hear what you guys think.
Dun dun dun. Egregores are harder to pinpoint than tulpas, but are reported in communities where groups attribute shared outcomes to a group spirit. Examples include sports teams, artistic collaborations, and religious or mystical orders.
Both tulpas and egregores illustrate the power of consciousness and belief. The mind can create perceived entities, and when multiple minds converge, these can feel as if they exist independently in the world.
Which is just amazing, you know, how it's kind of like you said, it's saying group spirit. It's just all those energies and everything else put brought together to make that happen, you know, or for something to occur.
Exactly. And it truly shows the power of the human mind, right?
Yes.
And all of the energy that we can put into the world when we focus. So I guess putting things out into the universe is a whole thing,
Yes.
technically. I guess it's actually something that we could take heed, that advice we can actually heed. But, it's really, really interesting when you boil this down and think about the idea that we can create something just with our belief and
Yes.
our energy and putting our faith into it, basically, right? It's
Hmm.
the idea that we can literally do whatever it is we put our minds to,
Yes.
literally, in the situation.
Literally.
Literally. God, I hate that word. But
I know.
I I
But you're not wrong
literally
though.
hate that word.
But you're not wrong when it comes down to like the group mindset.
Right,
Or some people would consider it like a hive mind when it comes down to creating an entity or anything around that
right.
because it's that one track mind
Mhm.
that
Well,
made
but
that become real.
not to be confused with groupthink, right? Where you just
Right.
think the same way, right? Like just because
Well,
me and you agree that, there's a possibility of life after death, that
yes,
doesn't necessarily mean that we are creating it, right?
that is also
It's
true.
a lot of this is focused. It's
Yes.
focused energy that's put into this, right?
That's the reason why I
And
like how
so,
they put it group spirit. I really
yeah,
like that.
I mean, pretty much it's the idea. And it's kind of like, the example that is on there of the sports teams,
Mhm.
right? It's you have a group spirit, yes, but really, it's not the sports team that would be the egregore of this situation. It's more the community itself and what the
Mhm.
sports team stands for, right? Is kind of
Right.
what the egregore becomes in
Hey,
this.
as long as it doesn't make the mascot come alive and go terrorize the other teams and stuff like that, I think it will be okay.
It's not Five Nights at Freddy's EA Sports Edition, but
I like that example.
EA
Nice.
Sports. We're in your wallet. But I'm sorry if anybody listening doesn't remember those intros for like NCAA 2002 from the
Yeah.
PlayStation 2. But but yeah, like it's really interesting when you look at the idea of the Tulpa versus the Egregore, especially, right? Like, you
Yes.
know, one is created by the individual and it's a focused thing. It's something that's not created by accident.
Right.
However, an egregore can be created by accident,
Mhm.
right? So if you think about it, right? If you look at, for instance, you look at the idea of Bloody Mary,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I'm only saying that once in this episode, but
You're perfectly fine.
but
Call her BM.
yeah, BM, yeah, bowel movement, great.
Oh
'Cause
God, now
she's
we're
the
in trouble.
shit. But but no, like you look at Bloody Mary. It's twice. Anyway, for those that don't know, we just both threw up a number two at each other. But the idea of BM is that, you know, if enough people believe, is it possible to create that inadvertently, right?
Yes,
I think
I
there was an
believe so.
episode, I think there was an episode of Supernatural
Yes,
that
there
dealt with
is.
the Tulpa. It was, oh, what was it? I forget what the episode was called or where it was at, but he was like in a cabin, right?
Yeah, and it was
I
a
ha-
symbol that was out in the cabin that it was supposedly tied to.
I have a problem with that episode
Uh-oh.
because what they created was not a Tulpa.
No, it wasn't.
It was an egregore that was
Mhm.
created accidentally.
Yes, because the
It
story came
used
out and just
Mhm,
ran with wildfire. Like, it just
right,
yeah.
and that was a group thing, kinda like the
Mhm.
idea of Slender Man or the idea of the Rake, right?
Yes.
That we talked about at the beginning. It's accidentally created, right? And that
Yes.
episode has always bugged me a little bit. Like, yes, they use Tibetan symbols, but really in reality, it's not even a Tibetan idea.
No, it's not.
It's it's Western.
Yes.
Right, and I think the egregore, I think the term egregore comes from France, if I'm not mistaken.
Ooh, might have to
I'd
Google
have
that
to
one.
I would have to double check that. If I'm incorrect and somebody lets me know, then, we'll say something in the next episode about it. We'll go that way. And, but yeah, it's just, you know, that's kind of the situation of almost getting it right?
Huh. I had to Google it, sorry.
Was I right?
Actually, it's okay. The term
'Cause I know
egregore
it probably
originates
comes
from
from
the
Latin.
ancient Greek word egregoros, wakeful,
Uh-huh,
which was used in the Book of Enoch to
okay.
refer to angelic watchers.
Ooh,
So it starts out there, but it says the modern concept of egregore as a collective thought form was popularized by French occultists. So you're right about the French, but the original term though was that far back. But
yeah,
still, I am not going to try to. It's I think a Fias Levy or Levi.
mhm,
I hope I didn't butcher that too bad. Sorry, everybody. It says in the late 19th century, and the word itself was used by French author Victor Hugo in
mhm,
1859. So there you go.
yeah,
Now we got
yeah,
the meaning or the
boom, and
origins. Nicely done.
yeah, and And that's the cool thing about the idea of, the Tulpa versus the Egregore, right? Is you do
Mhm.
have, it's very similar,
Yes.
right? Literally, the main difference between the two is how many people it takes to create it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that is really interesting because it's a fine line. That's one reason why I give that episode of Supernatural a pass because it is a fine line. And
Mhm.
people know what a tulpa is. People have heard the word.
Yes.
Not many people have heard what an egregore is,
Correct.
you know? And so I thought that it would be really important here to go over that, right?
Yes.
And talk about what the real difference between the two are, right?
Agreed.
Um, and so just to kind of reiterate for everybody what the difference is between the two is tulpas are individual mental constructs that can feel autonomous, right? While an
Right.
egregore is a collective thought form that emerges from shared belief and ritual, right? So
Which makes
it's
sense.
still, but you can still create it accidentally, right?
Yeah, because it's still coming from, I mean, yeah, mental construct or a thought form. I mean, it's still coming from the energies and the projective aspects from the brain, like
Right.
what you're thinking of, what you're wanting to create. It's, but yeah, you're not wrong. It's still a fine line when it comes down to it. It's
It
just a
really
difference
is.
between a single to a multiple.
Right. And, and both really demonstrate the mind's ability to create something seemingly independent of its creator, right? Something that
Hmm.
can grow legs and walk away,
Yes.
right? And that is a huge, huge thing. And that's a huge takeaway from this.
Yes.
Now, do you have anything to talk about before I get into my hot take?
Well, I mean, the main thing is, I mean, the nice thing is, I mean, understanding these concepts really helps researchers contextualize paranormal reports, separating personal experiences from emergent group phenomenon without assuming physical reality. So I mean, that's the takeaway for those two, because the fact, I mean, we have to have differences in order to understand for scientific purposes, to be able
Right.
to represent one or the other. Um, I mean, I know that's usually the hard part, especially if you're researching said sides. I mean, Tulpa's egregore. How? I mean, say if you find one, you come across something, and you think it is just the one person who created it, but then you start doing your research, and then you find out that more and more come out, like everything from online or media that just goes back and ties to said things. So, I mean, that's when you have to wonder, which one is
But
it?
but the real question comes in, what happens when you get videoed evidence of an egregore? You know, like
Or
Bigfoot.
photos?
So yes, I am
Uh-oh.
going to stand here. I am going to stand here and say with my whole chest. I think
Here he comes,
Bigfoot
guys.
might be an egregore. And hear me out.
Oh, no, here we go.
Okay, so Bigfoot kind of becomes whatever the perceiver needs him to be, right? Like
Correct.
he always looks the same,
Yes.
but like he disappears. He's far enough away. He's right up on them.
Yeah.
He's a positive thing. He's a negative thing, right?
Mhm.
And there's so little physical evidence at times,
Yes.
right? And he just disappears. What if our favorite thing to say here? What if Bigfoot is a product of collective belief? I need to know what people think about this.
I want to say that's. Oh my God. Okay, I'll give you this. That's feasible. That's a possibility because of video evidence and everything's always blurry or everything is always this. I mean, energies can come across like especially anything that's been created from a person's energy can be fuzzy and everything else because it's called an electronic disturbance.
Right. Hey, everybody, I just want to point this out. She agreed with me. All right, everybody, have a good
I did
night.
not no, I did not completely agree. I said it's possible. Hey, don't do this to me now. Come on.
But
But when it comes down to it, there is that possibility. I'm just saying that it could actually be a full-on cryptid. It could be a
it
real
could be. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he really could be.
because you never know. I mean, it's one of those things where okay, you make a valid point. It could be an egregore when it comes down to it. You do make a valid point because I mean, how long has he been in cryptid history? How long has people believed in him?
Recorded history.
Yeah, both.
So, I mean, there's been sightings of Bigfoot for
Going back a long time.
yeah, for a long, long time. Honestly, I can't even think of how long it's been. I'd have to look it up.
I
But
mean, he could just be the cousin of the Yeti. I mean, come on.
he could be the missing link. He could be like Harry and the Hendersons. I guess
I kind of hope
today is a movie episode, I guess. Let's
you're
just
not
start making a
wrong.
tally of how many movies I talk about today.
It's perfectly fine.
It is. I mean, because hell, we've had Drop Dead Fred, we've had V for
Yep.
Vendetta, we've had,
Yep.
I don't know, are we going to count Supernatural?
Yeah, we'll
Um,
count it. It's a TV show.
Harry and the Hendersons. Like, and those are just ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
Right. You're not
And,
wrong.
but I don't know. Like, I just have a feeling that we're overcomplicating some of these things. When you
It
look
could
into
be
the
something simple. You're
idea,
not wrong.
you look into the idea of the egregore. How many things can that explain? Right?
I agree.
It could explain Bigfoot.
Hmm?
I don't know that it could explain Nessie or
No,
Champ, right?
there's so many cryptids out there. It's
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to it, you don't know if we're dealing with like well, it kind of goes back into all the legends and lore.
Right.
So it's one of those things where you don't know if it could be that or it could be something else because anytime there's a legend that's been created, like an urban legend created in a town, say back whenever before the internet, before
Mm-hmm.
social media and everything, like way, way back then, usually urban legends stuck to the town.
Right.
But now with the internet and people being able to learn all over the world about all the different cultures and beliefs and legends and everything, it can empower it.
And what is it?
So
r/creepypasta?
pretty much, honestly,
Yeah.
that's where a lot of people share their stories, and
Right.
that's
Well,
where a
that's
lot of
kind of
people
where
learn about this.
I think that's where Slender Man started, was
It
there.
is,
And I think that's also where the idea of the rake started too,
yes, it is.
right? But when you really dig into this, right? Like I don't know if you've ever heard of, I think it was Cropsey, I think is
Yeah,
the cryptid's name, out of, I think it was up in New England somewhere.
right.
And but the idea was that there was this abandoned asylum that was up
Hmm.
there, or a school or something like that, right? And
I,
when
I
kids
think
would
it
go
was an
out there,
asylum, but I'm not 100.
yeah, I
percent
don't remember if it was an asylum or a school. It was a larger building, right?
Yeah.
And you had children would go missing
Hmm.
when they went there. No one would ever hear from them again.
Right.
So a legend started of Cropsey, right? He was this monstrous being that would come out and take you from the woods, and he would steal you away, and this, that, and the other, right?
Hmm.
And in true Scooby-Doo fashion, it turns out Cropsey was just a serial killer
Yep.
that lived there,
Yep.
right? And so it's like, You have so many explanations for these things. So I'm not saying that Bigfoot can only be an egregore.
Right.
But what I am saying is maybe, just maybe, we should think about it and see if it might explain it. Tulpas and egregores show us the extraordinary creative power of the human mind, individually and collectively.
From Tibetan monasteries to modern experiments like the Philip experiment.
And even Bigfoot, I'm just going to throw that back out there, even Bigfoot.
They remind us from consciousness itself can shape our experience of reality.
Exactly. And whether we're talking about creating, an imaginary friend or talking about, Bigfoot, I really appreciate you guys coming out and listening to this episode. Do me a quick favor. Before the end of this, I want to say, number one, thank you so much for your patience again while we've been dealing with all of these technical difficulties. And be sure to join our Discord. That's really where we're the most active and where you're going to be the most up to date. You can find that link on our website at pprg.paranormalresearch.org, or you can find it in our link tree that's on the channel description here, and I'll even include it in the show notes for you. Be sure to go ahead and jump on there so you guys can stay the most up to date. Check out our merchandise, help us grow, share this episode with everybody, and as always, stay curious, stay safe, and we will see you soon.
My name is Jesse. Thank you for tuning in to They're Still Here. Be sure to follow us on all our social media and join our Discord. Check our link tree for all of our links. Our theme is SCP-X7X, 6th Floor by Kevin MacLeod and Compotech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Stay curious, stay safe. We will see you soon.